she has not indicated in any way that she's moving in the direction of, if I could do it all over again, I would do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
She, has just, declined an invitation to have dinner with one of our activists, Ann Lysak, who lives in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, whose husband was a victim of gun violence a number of years ago. And she just doesn't seem to be particularly open to discussion around this issue, and really has not kind of moved off of the standard NRA talking points that she's been repeating all along. So, but I still think that, we're not going to stop contacting her and asking her to do the right thing, and keeping this issue up front and in public. I think it is, I think the time to do something around this is now. In New Hampshire, and nationwide, we've really kind of gun violence prevention be on the back burner for a long time. And I have a feeling that sort of hiatus has ended. I think that the public is really engaged around this issue and, is ready to take action in a way that I've never seen before. And, one of the tremendous things that we've seen here, and I think is happening all over the nation as well, is just a really strong engagement by members of the faith community around the moral issue of gun violence prevention and, what it means to us as a nation if we can't do at least one, small thing, and hopefully some larger things to prevent gun violence moving forward.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today. Thank you for all that you're doing in New Hampshire to prevent gun violence, and it was a delight talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
Try love, 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 and we try love again, and we try love, love.
Good afternoon and happy Cinco de Mayo. This is the Grassroots Corner. I'm Ernie Powell. And before we get started with this great group of guests, I want to talk to you a little bit about what this show is and what we try to do on the Grassroots Corner. The Grassroots Corner is sponsored by the National Organization to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. I am the Grassroots Director for that organization. We have 3 million members across the country. It is an organization that fights for the protection, the preservation, and the enhancement of Social Security and Medicare. Those 3 million members support the organization with dues of $12 a year. We don't have any corporate sponsors, and we don't sell any products. Our goal, as I said, is to protect and improve Social Security. What this show is about is not necessarily about the issues. It's about organizing, about the skill, some would say even the art of organizing. We believe that organizing is a skill that helps people form organizations to advocate on their own behalf within the democratic process on issues that impact their lives and their rights. Organizers assist and guide others in building people power. Organizers are not necessarily leaders. They are the catalyst in the building of people-based organizations. So what we talk about in the Grassroots Corner is not only issues, but also the essentials of how to organize. It is about the who, when, what, and how to organize. And there's a dramatic sense at this point in our country's history that organizing is very important. And the reason why is because the forces of reaction that blatantly represent the wealthy are working hard to take away the gains made in the last 50 years, gains made by the civil rights movement, by the women's movement, by the labor movement, and the senior movement. So it is our goal to organize on those progressive issues to protect those gains on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the issues and principles that make up what we know to be the American dream. So welcome to our show. We're going to have a great dialogue here today. What we're calling this show today is a roundtable on organizing. And I've got some of the most experienced people here on this panel to talk about the topic of organizing. In this roundtable, we'll talk to our guests about how to organize, how to build organization, how to take the issues that we care about and build strong grassroots power as a counterweight, if you will, to the sort of predatory and wealth-based interests that are trying to do what they're trying to do to the progressive ideals that we care about. How people do it from the technical point of view, from the strategic point of view, and the tactical point of view. And now let me introduce my guests. First of all, Danny Perry. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you.
Danny is the Director of Field Mobilization for the Alliance for Retired Americans. She's worked for the Alliance since 2002. She oversees a national network of state organizations while managing numerous state and federal campaigns on behalf of retired Americans. She's worked on issues important to the environment, as well as numerous electoral campaigns, and has a deep knowledge and experience in organizing. Next, I want to introduce and welcome Natasha Perez. Natasha has been active in grassroots organizing and campaign politics for over 20 years. She began as her first job was as political director for AARP in the mid-90s in the Northeast region. She served also as deputy director for the Massachusetts Democratic Party, and she currently is the field organizer for the National Committee in the Northeast part of the country, responsible for building the grassroots network for the National Committee. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you for having me here.
We're glad you're here. We also have with us today Maria Roach, who is part of United for Change USA. She has a radio show here on We Act Radio, which airs, I believe, on Wednesday mornings.
That's right, Wednesday at 11.
And we are very pleased to have you here, and we congratulate you on your new show.
Thanks, Ernie.
And also we have Alex Lawson, our good friend, who is the executive director of Social Security Works. That's an organization that fights for Social Security against cuts to benefits, as well as opposes privatization. He has a deep background in public policy, having worked for Media Matters, the Campaign for America's Future, and he's also the co-founder of We Act Radio. So welcome as well, Alex.
Always great to be here, Ernie.
We will also, Terry O'Neill, who is the president of NOW, will be joining us during the second half hour. But let me give you a little bit of an orientation of what we're doing today. This is a conversation. And the idea of this conversation is to create essentially a tutorial that other organizers can use, that folks that just want to get involved because they're angry, because something's happening to them, because they want to fight to protect certain interests at the grassroots level. So this is a tutorial in which we share our expertise, our knowledge, some history of the campaigns we have done in order to build that knowledge base so that other people can use our experience and hopefully benefit from it. So I guess my first question is, what inspired you to do this kind of work? I'm going to ask Alex that question.
That's a great question, Ernie. What inspired me is that I don't think I have an answer, but I can say that I've always believed and seen the power of people, going all the way back to high school. I organized in high school. Some of the first things I organized, I liked hardcore punk rock music, so I threw hardcore punk rock shows, and to get in, people had to bring a canned good, and we gave that to some battered women's shelters on the North Shore. And
where was that high school?
Outside Chicago in Lake Forest, Illinois. And it was actually just tremendous to see what could happen with that. A lot of the people who came to the shows did care, and they would sign up to stay involved. But there were a lot of people who actually just were coming to the show. But what we were able to create, we actually had to stop bringing canned goods because they said, this is annoying, kind of. You will bring carloads and carloads of canned goods. So try just switching to money, which we did. And, it really was an eye-opener of how a pretty small action, when you harness, we had an idea, something that people could do. It was a low bar action. It's not difficult to get them to come to something that is entertaining. but that what that could translate into was actually thousands and thousands of dollars that was paying the salaries of people who were doing tremendous good for the community. And really, I think it was being involved in that, and I had some great mentors who kind of brought me in and showed me how you could harness people power to achieve great outcomes. So I think that's kind of, and I've just stuck with it ever since, because once you see how powerful it is, and obviously my education from my parents has the largest impact of why I am pushing for what I see as a positive change in the world, because they've always empowered me and urged me to do that, even though politically we oftentimes don't agree. So it's those two things: seeing how much you can accomplish by harnessing a number of people pointed in one direction. I've seen that, and now with new tools you can magnify what I did back in high school to amazing levels.
My first experience in politics was a high school fight as well, except in this one it was in Rialto, California, where it would get to 115 degrees and they wouldn't let us wear a T-shirt to school. So we did a sit-down strike, and a week later we were wearing T-shirts. Who wants to go next? Who wants to go next?
I could go. Well, Ernie, I also had kind of a pivotal moment as well. I was in undergraduate school, a sophomore at Whittier College, and I was a biology major. My background is conservation biology. We were doing a lot of joint research with other colleges about how an expansion of a freeway in Southern California, imagine that, an expansion of a freeway, would impact mountain lions and really reduce their habitat and force them to cross very populated areas during mating season, because that drive to mate would override any other instinct of safety. And so we did lots of research. We put together a great study. And our college professor said, okay, now we need to go to the state legislature and we need to show them the biology and the science behind this decision making. And we, a bunch of biology nerds, we thought, okay. So we went to the state legislature in Sacramento, a place you're very familiar with. Seared into my imagery is my first lobby visit ever, where a member of the state legislature, can't remember where he's from or what district he represents, put his cowboy boots up on his desk, took our report and threw it in the trash and said, I don't care what your report says. Progress has to happen and people need to be able to move freely. And no one in my class of 5 or 6 biology majors, knew what to say. We were astounded. We just assumed, because the numbers were there and the science was there, that a right decision would be made. And it was at that time that I realized that it didn't matter if you're right or you had the right answer or was the right policy, that you had to organize. And you had to put political force behind that answer. And so I promptly came back and became a double major in political science, and also formed a organization on campus called Conservation of Wildlife Through Awareness that still exists. And they started more of a lobbying effort in Sacramento to take students out of the college that were not necessarily political science majors and involve them in the political process, so they understood, no matter what walk of life they chose for their profession, that it will all lead back to organizing in the political process.
So you had a negative experience with that legislator, and yet you stayed on. I mean, why?
It frustrated me. I thought because we were doing good work and our research showed a certain impact on the environment that was not good, that the legislature would make a decision that would balance the interests of people being able to build a freeway with environmental concerns.
And yet you understood at that moment one of the first principles of direct action organizing, which is knowledge in and of itself does not win a fight.
Absolutely.
But organizing, supported by good knowledge, helps to win that fight.
Absolutely.
It's very insightful. It's very insightful. Natasha?
Similar to Alex, I think I really got learned about organizing from my family, from growing up. I grew up in northern Maine, believe it or not, a product of hippies. Everyone had moved to northern Maine from California. My father was from New York. They were part of a hippie movement that came out of Berkeley. And every weekend we had a potluck with everybody in the community, and we talked about the issues and we talked about organizing. So for day one, I sort of knew I was going to be an organizer. And I think what's most interesting that I take away from it is that sort of potluck, that relationship, that building of community, that's really how I move forward and look at organizing, because that's where the real strength comes from. So I try to take those lessons forward when I do my organizing work now.
These are incredible ideas, incredible themes. Maria, great stuff, Natasha, great stuff.
I kind of share that I fell into organizing because I am a television producer, 20 plus years working in the news media. And so it's only a year that I have been wearing the mantle of organizing. But I think in every step along the way of my life, I have been moving to this moment. For me, it was just a sense of outrage that a year ago that a young Black man could walk through his home community and be gunned down because he looked suspicious. And when I saw the images of Trayvon Martin, he looked like an advanced copy of my son, who's just turned 8. And as a parent, as a mother of little Black boys, I was outraged. And I thought that I just have to do something. This is one of those moments that I can't sit back in my comfortable home, surrounded by my husband and children, and not step into this. So it's a big leap of faith. It was for me saying, well, I'm not going to be in media, because in the media you're covering the stories and you see the after effects of devastating.
And you're essentially neutral too.
And
right?
you must be theoretically neutral.
Yeah.
Although I think once you put pen to paper and you write the story, there's a level of objectivity that you lose. But for the most part, you can't say that this is a broken system.
So the themes that I'm hearing coming out here, this is really interesting. So number one is taking action, okay, becoming an active civic player, knowledge combined with the acquisition or the mobilization of power. You knew the moment, some instinct told you, Danny, the moment you saw that document go into the trash can, that you needed to do more, that it was good to be right, but you needed to back that up with citizen power. And then the building of community that you learned from your family and from the people that were with your family and all their friends, that there was power and effectiveness there. And finally, taking action that you talked about, Alex. So it's really interesting to see the small things in life that lead to bigger ideas. What I want to do next is I want to talk about what you believe organizing is. So let's start with Maria. Tell us what organizing is to you.
In looking at the way I've been able to engage 500,000 people, I think organizing comes from a personal story that inspires some type of an action or a level of engagement. And I think that's what was really successful about my action in the wake of Trayvon Martin's death was to ask Attorney General Holder to step in and investigate his killing. But it started with my story. It didn't start off with numbers. Everyone knows that there are statistics that you can use ad infinitum on the issue. It started off with me being a mom of 2 little Black boys being outraged. And I think that's what inspired people to, you know what, I have children. And it wasn't speaking just to the Black moms or to the white moms or the Latino, it was speaking to humanity. And I think organizing is just who you are and finding people who agree with what you believe in and acting with you when you see something that's not being done.
But there's another step there, and you gave them a tool by which to express that moral outrage.
Absolutely, yes. For me, the call to action was to sign a petition.
Okay, Danny, what's organizing mean to you?
I think organizing from both a professional standpoint, Ernie, and personal, what I've seen in my life is really about engaging people in an awareness to have a personal responsibility for the greater good. And I think, a lot of times we kind of float through life and we're really concerned just about kind of ourselves. And you were talking about, would I be content just to sit at home in my comfortable home with my family? And you weren't anymore. And I think that what I've experienced working with the Alliance for Retired Americans, I started working with seniors when I was very, very young, 22 years old, and didn't know what Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security was. And what I sensed in them right away is that they had a personal responsibility to fight for what they had earned, to constantly protect it at the local, city, and state and federal level. But they always looking and engaging in opportunities to make my life better, to make their children and their grandchildren's life better. So to me, organizing is really about making folks aware of the opportunities that we all have, whether it's their personal interest or a community's interest, to fight for something and to protect it.
And what do they do with that awareness?
Well, they do what, for the Alliance for Retired Americans, and how we mobilize people, it's constantly lobbying. It's holding members of Congress accountable. It's raising awareness in the community and educating members. And you look at some of the policy issues that we're looking at right now with some potential changes to Social Security. So taking a responsibility to go out and just how they have received certain information, have been educated on it, taking a responsibility to educate those in their community and ask things of those people in the community. Talk to your member of Congress. Come to a meeting with me.
Outstanding. Natasha.
I sort of see organizing as empowerment and leadership development. Really, this idea that when we as an organizer go to the community, we're working to that community to leave it better than it was before we got there. But not only that, so that we may do a series of campaigns, and campaigns are very different than organizing. You can have someone win a campaign, but that doesn't necessarily empower them to move on to the next campaign or win the next issue. So for me, organizing is really about the individual and how do we empower them, and how do we develop leadership skills, and how do we leave them with a toolbox to fight the next battle.
That distinction between campaigns and organizing, I think we don't give enough thought to that. Sometimes, I believe that we oftentimes in this profession think that a campaign is organizing. And so I think that's an important practical distinction. Alex?
Well, my answer, I think, is it's a little touchy-feely, but I think that organizing is kind of magic because it's this really deeply human thing. There's something that is not tangible to it, but there are outcomes, and you can see it work, and that's when you know that it's a real thing. So I actually think that it's one of these deeply human things that goes all the way back, and it's the fact that we understand at some level that when we come together, that when you get individuals and you stand them next to each other and you all raise your voice together, there's actually an immense power to that. And sometimes some of the structures that are in place are wrong or bad or evil. And throughout history, there's great examples of people standing up to those structures and shouting them down. And I kind of edged into organizing. I didn't really know any of the theory behind it or anything. I just saw the power of the outcome, right? Wow, when we work together, we can accomplish something pretty immense, something that I could never accomplish on my own. And so I've got a whole host of stories of different, small to pretty huge outcomes. But at their root, what they always come down to is identifying something that we feel needs to change, getting a big group of people who agree with that, and then through various means trying to make that change. And that's what I think is the magic part, is that it's really just a whole group of people trying together. And there are tactics, and we're going to talk about a lot of them. And, there's theory behind it and tactics and best practices. But those best practices at some point didn't exist. They actually were created by groups of people. And all they agreed on was that something needed to change, and we're going to do whatever we can to make that change.
You talk about the magical part. A couple of months ago on this show, we had Mark Grossman, who was Cesar Chavez's press guy back in the late 60s, and he quoted Cesar being the leader of the farm workers movement. And he quoted Cesar as saying that organizing is getting ordinary people to do extraordinary things. So I second what you said, and I appreciate that point. Okay, why don't we go to a break, and we'll be right back. This is the Grassroots Corner. I'm Ernie Powell.
This is John Bauman. You know me best as Bowser, formerly of the group Shot On Up. And when we were rocking and rolling all those years ago, I wasn't particularly worrying about my retirement or how I'd pay for health care. But now that I'm 65, I really understand the importance of Medicare. Not just for myself, but for generations of working Americans who need secure health care as they get older. That's why this election is so important. The Romney-Ryan Coupon Care Plan will mean the end of traditional Medicare. It gives seniors a partial payment which loses value over time and raises our health care costs as much as $500 more each month. Coupon Care also puts us at the mercy of private insurers, making it harder to pick our own doctors. All of this to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy? Are you kidding me? Americans of all ages, say no to Coupon Care. Bum 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 dang a dang dang ding a dong ding. Preserve Medicare.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
Welcome back to the Grassroots Corner. Once again, the Grassroots Corner is sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. I'm the Grassroots Director. I work for that organization. We are 3 million strong across the country. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare does not accept any corporate donations. We don't sell any products. It's all dues-based, and we have a big volunteer organization composed of our members and a very effective grassroots network. So I'm pleased to have these great guests on today. Our theme is organizing. This is a roundtable on organizing. We've talked about why we've all become involved as organizers. And we've talked about what stimulated us to do that. I want to talk now about some of the successes and wins that we've experienced and how we got to those wins. So let's start with Alex. Alex, tell us about some of the best experiences you've had as an organizer.
It's a good one. I think the best success that I took part in, that I was a part of the movement that actually made this happen. It's a small policy, but its impact is massive. It's real people's lives who are helped. And it was also, so I worked at Whitman Walker Clinic, which is an HIV clinic here in the District of Columbia. And I also had founded an advocacy group called DC Fights Back. And I did that because the clients who I had at Whitman Walker, they would tell me stories that made perfect sense. So, a lot of the shortcomings that they faced in the District of Columbia made total sense. They were like, why do I have to go to this side of the city to get my mental health services, and then this side of the city to get HIV services, and there's no bus fare between them, and the person is homeless and indigent, right? So that's just, it made sense that we could change those policies. But there's an inability for the power structure to hear those concerns. And that's why I created DC Fights Back, which was an all-volunteer organization to just basically take these valid concerns and speak them to the Wilson Building, which is the power here in DC, the local government. And we had a host of successes. Actually, before there were no free condoms in the District of Columbia. Actually, let me back up. The District of Columbia has the highest HIV case rate in the country. The nation's capital has the highest HIV case rate in the country. It's a generalized epidemic in this city. And that is the base of it. Is I said, this isn't acceptable, right? We can't just accept this as the way things are. So there were no free condoms available from the Department of Health in the District of Columbia. And they said, we can't do that. It's not cost effective, which is a total lie. But they just made excuses. So we got together a group of volunteers, and we went to
and these were people directly impacted by this
issue. Yes, HIV positive, right. Although not every volunteer was, but definitely the majority of DC Fights Back are folks who are living with HIV, have the knowledge and the personal stories to understand the issue, and they're coming at it with a passion and an understanding of the immensity that such a simple change like having condoms available could bring. So. But we also had a lot of folks who aren't HIV positive, but just understood that they wanted to do something.
Just cared about the issue.
And I think that having both together, all volunteering for change, was really powerful. And actually, my other co-founder of We Act Radio, Kamon Freeman, worked on this same project many years ago with me. So we said, oh, it's not possible. Okay, well, watch this. And there's literally 7 of us who did this. 7 individuals with a budget of 0. We went to the condom company and we said, can you just donate us some condoms? Because we're going to give them away for free in Washington, D.C. And they said, of course we can. Then we went to a few businesses in the wards that were heaviestly impacted by HIV that were open 24 hours. And we said, can we give away free condoms in your establishments? And they said, of course you can. And then we just kept refilling them. And they went, and community loved it because, now there are free condoms available in non-stigmatizing settings. So people didn't have to go into a health clinic. They could go into a place that they would, a place of business, right, that they would go, in their normal everyday life. Barber shops, for example, or other places like that. Barbershops are great because people also talk there and they can share information. And each of the packets, and we actually put information in there as well. And this is 7 volunteers. We did it for about 7 months or so. We called the program Lifeguard. And again, we had a budget of 0. We just had everything donated to us. And then we went to the city and we're like, you know what? You're lying because we just did what you said was impossible and not cost effective. For $0.
So when you went to the city, who did you go there with?
The same people, the volunteers, folks who are living with HIV, and some of the folks were also on the citizen boards that the city has to listen.
So to get to the technical part about campaigning, what you did is you took folks that were directly impacted plus allies that you developed.
Exactly.
And you confronted the power center, and you won a victory?
A complete victory. We also, I will say, the one other technical thing is we went to the press at every step along the way.
Of course, that's a good tactic.
So that the whole fight was out in the open. And we got stories written. And it shamed the power structure. And now condoms are available for free everywhere in the District of Columbia. The Department of Health will actually send you them, and there are distribution centers around the city in non-stigmatizing settings. In fact, We Act Radio's studio here at 1918 Martin Luther King Avenue in Southeast Washington, D.C. is a condom distribution center. And this is one of the things about organizing, I think, is most important, is we didn't care about credit, right? They came to us and in like 4 weeks afterwards, it was their idea. They were telling us, You know, like, look at how well we did this. We did such a
You
great
mean the people
job.
that were disagreeing
Exactly.
with you to begin with?
And the Department of Health, you know, once they made that turn and it became their idea, then, you know, they just totally forgot but it didn't matter, because what mattered is now that anyone in the District of Columbia has access to life-saving condoms, and they're available in non-stigmatizing settings. So I don't care, and none of our volunteers care that the Department of Health thinks they thought of it on their own.
That's the greatest form of flattery, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Who wants to go next? Tell us about the most interesting grassroots campaign that you had that was successful. And how did you get that win, or how did the organization get that win?
I'll go quickly. One of the best campaigns or organizing campaigns that I worked around in terms of issue advocacy was when President Bush came out and was really pushing for Social Security to be partially privatized in accounts. And I had just created the Pennsylvania Alliance for Retired Americans a year earlier, so I think that was around 2005. And this was an issue, Social Security, and Alex talks about this a lot with one of the many hats he wears. Social Security is a very well understood issue for beneficiaries, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And it is something that beneficiaries care deeply about, but it is also something that is very conflicting to other generations, especially folks my age thinking that Social Security won't be there. This campaign had a lot of energy, especially in Pennsylvania. We had a Senator, Rick Santorum, happened to be in office during that time, a very polarizing figure as well. And the Pennsylvania Alliance for Retired Americans was very new. People were still trying to figure out who this organization was and what we were doing. And we provided an engagement strategy, an avenue for a lot of union retirees to participate in this process of fighting back. And Natasha had talked about how organizing is really about developing leaders and empowering them. And a lot of what we did was just taking ordinary folks that had just retired from teaching or from the communication sector, and saying, you're on Social Security, go talk about it. Be an advocate for it. You don't have to be a specialist. You don't have to be an economist. Don't have to work for the Social Security Administration. Go talk about it. The other thing that we did with the Pennsylvania Alliance for Retired Americans is we brought retirees into our colleges and universities in Pennsylvania throughout the Commonwealth. And everybody said it wouldn't work and that we never get in, there's too much red tape. And we just had the best time covering that state with...
So you made it, you added to the constituency you had and made it intergenerational.
Absolutely. We said, this is never going to work unless we involve students and get them to stand with their parents and with their grandparents in an intergenerational campaign. And our retirees, who are primarily union retirees, were, to be honest with you, a lot of them were a little nervous about doing this. They hadn't really, if they hadn't had a career working with students, they weren't really sure how to reach out to them on this issue. And it taught everybody involved just so much about how to articulate the issues that they care about and empower other people to fight for them as well. So on a lot of levels, the Social Security privatization battle was one of the best campaigns I ever worked on, because the issue was easy to understand. Seniors and retirees were so willing to fight for it, and it was a turning point where they were willing to become more engaged beyond that battle for things yet to come, and the Affordable Care Act was a perfect example of that.
And one of the things that the privatizers banked on was that they would be able to split seniors away, because they would tell them they weren't going to be impacted. And in fact, that never happened. Seniors were as angry as anybody else.
Right. And of course, history is still repeating itself, isn't it, Ernie?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Natasha.
We had two great issue campaigns, so I thought I'd talk about an electoral campaign.
Good.
I did, which was one of my favorite campaigns, and it was in 1996. I was with AARP. You'll remember that, Ernie, our time together. Couple years before, Peter Torkelson, Congressman Torkelson in Congressional District 6 in Massachusetts, had continued to vote against seniors' interests. We met with him during the legislative cycle several times to get him to move on bills that we favored and care about, and each time he voted the wrong way. And so we decided to really actively get involved in that election. And we did that by going to senior centers in that district and educating other seniors about how important this election was, what issues were at stake. And I think there had been some privatization before the campaign you're talking about that was under where Forbes had brought in the privatization issue and was kind of pushing it at that time.
He campaigned on that.
And so that was floating out there. Changes to Social Security were floating out there, and we educated seniors in the district. We had candidate forums so that we could have the candidates actually hear from the elected officials who were running in that race. And we did something really different, because most people think seniors vote and that's enough, and I'm going to educate the seniors who vote and leave it at that. We decided to do something different. We looked at the demographics and saw that there was a group of Russian and other immigrant seniors who were not registered to vote. So we used door knockers in 5 different languages and took them through the senior buildings in that district, and then held voter registration. In the end, we registered 1,000 voters, and Congressman Tierney, who won that seat, won by 300 votes. And to this day, he has been one of the strongest advocates on senior issues. And he saw the power that seniors and senior organizations can actually have in an election.
It's a great story. That's great organizing. Maria?
The stories were so amazing and inspiring. I think for me, the successes that I had was in raising new leaders. It was fantastic for me to have 600,000 people sign the petition. But I think for me, it was also important to have the ongoing empowerment factor, and especially for women, to see women make a decision that, you know what, I can do this too. And so there were 3 women who emailed me or called me. They Googled me and found my number. They were very persistent and said, there's something that I'm not happy about in my community, and I think I want to create a petition on assault weapons and a ban. And I was working with signon.org, which is the organization and their petition tool that I used, and I was helping identify people who wanted to also start campaigns and coach them. And we seized great media opportunities, and they had 200,000 sign a petition to ban assault weapons. One woman had 300,000 for a petition to fact check the debates. So it wasn't just an issue, it was the empowerment, that it wasn't just the gun safety issue that I was working on, but it was helping men and women of all different walks of life realize that they were empowered and had power. And I think one thing that we talked about a little bit, but in defining organizing and organizations, it's changing the balance of power. And that's something that I have seen in the last year, that with the tools that we have, we can quickly change that.
And with what?
Petitions, with phone calls, with the personal story. I think with going to the person that at that moment has power and challenging them, challenge the premise of...
With numbers of people that are directly impacted by the issue.
Exactly.
Or with numbers of people who care about the issue. On that note, we'll take a little bit of a break. We'll be right back. This is the Grassroots Corner, sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. We'll be right back. Did I make up for it?
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
This is John Bauman. You know me best as Bowser, formerly of the group Sha Na Na. The These days, I'm rocking and rolling nationwide as part of the Truth Tour with the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Some politicians claim they want to protect Medicare, but the truth is they support the Romney-Ryan Coupon Care Plan, which would end traditional Medicare. This could raise our health care costs as much as $500 more each month. Ending Medicare doesn't protect it. Learn the facts and join our national campaign at thetruthnow.org.
June 27th is National HIV Testing Day.
HIV testing is fast, painless, and often free.
I've been tested for HIV.
I've been tested for HIV. Have you? To find an HIV testing center near you, visit greaterthan.org.
Welcome to Ernie Powell's Grassroots Corner, only on Pivot Point with Maya Rockymore.
Try love, 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 and we try love again. And we try love, love.
Welcome back. This is the Grassroots Corner, sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. If you want to get active as a volunteer with the National Committee, please go to www.ncpssm.org. Click on Get Involved, and you can become a volunteer in any of our states. We need you. We want you to be active, and it's a great place to learn about this and to learn about the issues and to work with us to protect Social Security and Medicare. Okay, we've got this great panel going. We've covered a lot of territory. Let's go to some more technical parts of the art and the skill of organizing. What tools can an activist use in organizing? Let's see it. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about tactical work on the ground. I'm going to start with Danny.
Okay. So in tools in terms of social media and just in general online, I know one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot in terms of the Alliance for Retired Americans is that we will oftentimes hold events, press events, membership events, rallies, conferences, and because we're statewide and because we're a national organization, we're always leaving someone out. Someone will not be able to attend, and we're constantly worrying about keeping them cultivated as an activist and engaged in our campaigns. And so we're starting to use a lot of more online organizing in terms of sending somebody a video of what happened at the event or live streaming the event to make them feel like they're still a part of it. Also, anytime we run what we call an on-the-ground campaign, such as we're doing around Social Security right now and into the summer, a field work around Social Security, we always will create an online component to it to complement it, because we know that there's many levels of activists. Our traditional activists will get involved on the ground. We'll be there at the lobby meeting. We'll be raising hell at the rally, and we'll be signing other people up with our petitions. But many of our activists, particularly the more new emerging retirees just coming out of the workforce, start out as online activists, that they're willing to sign a petition online. They're willing to send a pass-through letter to their member of Congress. And they're willing to forward emails to their friends with our content. And so in terms of kind of more social media online, we're really looking to marry any type of traditional field work on the ground, always with an online component. This is not really social media, but along those lines as well, from an organizing perspective, we feel it's really important to connect with people, just not using a computer. But also allowing us to hear their voice and they to hear our voice as well. So every campaign we do now, we also want to marry it with what we call a teletown hall, where we ask our members to jump on the phone. It's open to all members, whether they're active or engaged or not, and they can hear about our campaigns, they can hear about ways to get involved, and they can also hear, most likely not every time, but from a member of a member of Congress. So it's our way to try, no matter what level of activism they feel comfortable with, that there's still a way for them to engage, to get information, and to act on that.
The name of the game in organizing is numbers. The name of the game is getting people impacted by the issues, engaged in those issues, and then taking direct action with what we call, in fancy strategy charts, the target. And the target is the person who can give you what you want. What you're talking about is exponentially expanding that capacity through online, through live streaming, et cetera, and you, Natasha, have just had an experience with that because you were able to get, in a public setting, a senator in your part of the country give a very direct answer to the whole question of the chain CPI. Could you talk about that as a tool and what the potential that has for us in organizing at a deeper level?
Absolutely. One of the things that we do a lot of out in the field is what's called bird dogging. And at one time, you would go to a candidate town hall or a forum, and you would ask a candidate a question on your issue to get them to go on the record, and you would hope that the press covered it favorably. And one of the things we found out is through social media and our phones or a flip cam, we are reporters. And that's what we really work with our organizers on. So when a candidate is up there talking or an elected official is up there talking, we not only have them ask the question, but we make sure they bring a friend and get it recorded. So we did get Senator Ayotte. Believe it or not, I know a lot of the coverage that came out of Senator Ayotte's bird dogging was about the gun bill, but she actually, we had 2 questions on Social Security and chain CPI. She did say, well, I think it's a good idea, and it's your gut, and it's Obama who has put chain CPI on the table and wants to cut Social Security. But she also said that she was willing to raise the age of Social Security. So now what we're going to be able to do is we have her on the record. We can take that video out and email it to our membership and say, this is what your senator is saying. And then give the volunteers some action. So they really have it, it's like they attended the event that they couldn't attend. One of the interesting things about Tools and Skills, I find that a long time ago, back in the day when I used to do trainings, it was more like issue training and it was spokesperson training. Now I find so much of it is about social media. How does Facebook work? How do we capture it? In part, I think because the media has changed. I think that's why you have We Act Radio. And it exists because you need avenues and media that is not controlled by corporate interests who don't put your message out there. So what using social media and organizing allows us to do is to be our own reporter, get our message out there in a broader way without our message being controlled by interests who are more corporate.
And the theme is enabling people to organize and mobilize through the democratic process. And the more that we teach the technique, the stronger our issues become and the stronger our movements become. Alex, have you got a comment on this?
Yeah, I think it's the theme of what everyone is talking about, and you brought it up. It's that the tools have changed, but the important thing is to understand the theory below it, and it took me a long time to get there, but now that I do, I try to get people to start there, because then there's so many things they can do with it. But the theory is you got to gather people together, and then you have to get their voices, and raise their voices, and get them to the people who are the decision makers, the people who have the power to make the change. And with that, as what you're going for, it can take any form, right? A paper petition, signing names and call and phone numbers, then calling them and getting them to call the decision maker. And what I think technology has done is sped that up and amplified it to an extent that's almost unimaginable, right? Because now you can there are tools like signon.org, there's other petition sites where you can set up an online petition, send it to your email through your friends by email or on Facebook. You can gather thousands or hundreds of thousands of petition signatures like Maria. Then you can communicate to that universe of people, right? That's the key. It doesn't end at gathering the people. That's the start of it. That's when you can then take and go and bird dog a candidate. And again, it's the theme is that technology has democratized this stuff. We can now produce our own media We can take our iPhones or whatever phone you have, and this is an amazing camera with an amazing microphone on it, and now we're basically walking around with technology at the level that's it's pretty unimaginable. Before, you'd have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, and now you can just walk around with an iPhone. If you would let me, a really quick story that I had.
Please.
You can live stream right from your phone directly, so it's live onto the internet. And I was live streaming the Bowles-Simpson Commission.
Right.
I was the communications director of Social Security Works at the time. And the Bowles-Simpson Commission was discussing ways of cutting Social Security and Medicare behind closed doors. We'd gone to Congressman John Conyers, and with his help, he'd sent a letter that said, you can't do this behind closed doors. You have to allow video cameras in there and live stream it. And they, of course, said no, because they know it's deeply unpopular. They don't want people knowing about it. So I stood outside of the commission with my phone, and I actually live streamed the closed door. And I stood there for 3 hours every time they met, the closed door, me live streaming it. And every once in a while, people would come out, and I'd give, I'd say, so how's it going in there talking about cutting Social Security? And, they'd evade me. And then one time, Alan Simpson, who is the co-chair of the commission, gave me an impromptu 8-minute interview where he just first of all, he showed himself to be an absolute moron. I mean, like, so stupid about the issue that it's surprising that he's allowed anywhere near it. But second, he affirmed that that's exactly what they were doing behind closed doors. He said, yes, we're discussing ways of cutting your Social Security. And I don't think he really realized what was going on because he just saw me with my phone. My phone was live streaming it directly to the front page of Firedog Lake, a website that has thousands of viewers who were watching it. It immediately got pulled by MoveOn.org and turned into an email with a petition that went out to part of their 8 million members. And bam, now it was reported. That's what's going on. And then the American people soundly rejected it because they're like, we don't want you to cut our Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So again, it's like when you understand the theory, then you can see all of the tools that are out there that you can take advantage of.
Exactly.
And come up with new ways of using them. That's what I'm always interested in. The best ideas always come to us in D.C. from the field.
And if I can jump in on
Yeah,
the
I was
going
to call on you next and ask you, please.
I think that Alex makes a really great point. Sometimes we have, as organizers and activists, an idea in our head, and we're thinking this is the right approach. But I think you have to go where the people are and find out what's really, chapping their britches, so to speak. I had a great victory right before the second presidential debate where everyone was up in arms about the gun violence issue. And this was after Aurora, and it was after a spate of shootings in Chicago. This was before Newtown, months before Newtown. And I saw this energy on social media, but not a lot of mainstream media coverage. And so my partner and I connected with a pastor in Brooklyn, Reverend Johnny Youngblood, who is a spitfire unto himself, quite a force unto himself. And we decided that we were going to protest at Hofstra University the day before the debate. Now, putting on my producer hat, I knew that news producers were looking for content, and they would be running around, scurrying, trying to find a story. So that helped me to know that people are going to be looking for content. I'll provide them content. And so we had a busload of handsome young men with signs. We got lots of great press. Fast forward, they asked a story about gun safety at the debate. And I think sometimes it's really finding first who are your coalition partners who are as mad as you are, and then second, putting them in the right place. So just a little note, before a debate is always a good time to have a protest.
I happened to watch Rocky 1 last night, and there's this great line in there where the old trainer that comes along and helps Rocky to start his fighting career back, and he says, Burgess Meredith, he says to Rocky, "You're going to become a very dangerous poison." And I have to tell you, you folks are dangerous people. Don't ever get mad at me, please. You really know how to do this work, and it's quite something to hear about all these techniques and all of these really smart strategic approaches. But I want to segue into another way to think about this, and that is, how does the mistrust in government help or hurt our efforts? And what I'm hearing from you is that the way in which our democracy is changing, with sort of the way in which more people can be participatory in our democracy, that it actually gives me hope that it's possible particularly in this very partisan and very polarized era, it's possible still to do citizen engagement. So I'd like you to comment on that point as organizers and as leaders in a progressive movement. Go ahead, Natasha.
Well, I think it's both. It does both. It helps and it hurts us. One of the ways that I think it hurts us is government used to be there as the solution, and Social Security and Medicare are two of the best solutions they ever came up with to deal with senior poverty, right? And so now people look at the government and they don't look at it in that solution finding role. But at the same time, I think what it does, I spoke at the New Hampshire Progressive Summit on Saturday in Henniker, New Hampshire, yesterday. And what was interesting, though, is people really sort of feel like it's going to be about them moving their legislators, in part because we talked about 90% of people support background checks, yet it failed. 85% support no cuts to Social Security and Medicare, yet both of these things are up on the table. So what does that mean for us as a community? We can't sit back and sort of say, okay, our legislator is going to vote in our interests, they're going to protect us, and we can pick by party. I'm going to pick a Democrat because a Democrat is going to vote my way. I don't think it's that simple anymore. So I think people are beginning to sort of feel that frustration and get the understanding that without their voice, a loud voice, and a true story of the impact that whether it's the gun bill or it's cuts to Medicare or Social Security are having on their families, without them doing that, change won't happen. So they see the responsibility.
It requires participation.
It requires participation.
And the organizer's job is to tap that.
Yep.
And to help facilitate that. Alex, you want to comment?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I really do have a core belief that any problems with democracy are always solved with more democracy. And so there's been some serious reversals in our system representing the will of the people. Citizens United is one of the worst examples where it really empowered a tiny group of fantastically wealthy plutocrats who are able to bend the entire system to suit their needs. It empowered that. But I also think at the same time, there are tools that are allowing people power, like we talked about in the last question, to just really harness the amount of people to somewhat balance that out. And the good news about plutocrats is that they don't like each other, so they fight each other at the whole time. And if we can harness the people power and point it at them, I think that we get back to the government representing the will of the people. Now, I think people don't just distrust the government, I guess is my thing. It's that there's been a profound shift in people's distrust of institutions, of all institutions, because there is so much bunk information out there, so many self-interested things masquerading as public interest, and they've been caught so many times that people really are in a place where they don't just trust the voice of authority from on high. And I think that's a good thing, because I think that the voice of authority on high is that the old adage that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is more than just an easy to remember phrase. It's true. When people start getting power, institutions start getting power, they begin to abuse that power. Not all the time, but enough that people should be distrustful, and they should have ways of checking it. And I think the democratizing of the media that we were talking about, the fact that I founded a radio station with my business partners, is because I think that the group of 7 companies that own most of the media that we see is completely disastrous for us to be able to get the truth. The fact that only in America do those 7 companies still create a question around whether climate change is real, right? I mean, and these same companies have clear corporate interests at stake in that massive question. That I think it's really important that people have these different avenues of asking questions and of democratizing the media and, again, power. It cuts a few different ways, but the problems with democracy you solve by more democracy. So to me, we just need to use all the tools that are out there to get more and more people involved, and that's going to be the right way forward.
So Danny, one more time. In an age of such polarization, what faith do we still have in the possibility of organizing?
Well, we have a lot of faith, and I think personally for me, it's because I work with retirees with the Alliance for Retired Americans. I think that there is certainly a weariness that I see with retirees, and they always say to me, Danny, it never used to be like this. During my day, and speaking specifically about Congress, folks would talk to one another. It wasn't just Democrat, Republican, like folks would really talk to one another. And I think that there is this weariness that it will never get better. But the good thing about working with retirees that have fought all these battles and see the pendulum constantly swinging back and forth is that beneath their weariness is faith, and that they know that it's their responsibility to make it better. I also think in working with different generations, not necessarily retirees, is that there is sometimes a fundamental lack of understanding about the role of government in our lives, and that it does then funnel to this mistrust. And I think that if we can, in our organizing and in the campaigns that we build around, HIV advocacy and Social Security and Medicare, is always talk about the role that government can play, we can maybe start to fix that over time. So I'm optimistic, and I thank the retirees for that because they've taught me to be that way.
Maria, comments?
I think I would just add to all of the great responses that were given is to let everyone know that they have power, that government is only as good as the people who are governed by it. And if it's broken, that we have the power within us to fix it. And I have seen some things over the years. I'm the product of social workers. And I think that, yes, we're not doing a good job of caring for our people, and there's too much self-interest. And I think if we just really tackle the self-interest and how that has really changed the tenor of government in America, then I think we can swing the pendulum back the right way. But we have the power, and that's been really exciting.
Outstanding. Well, I've enjoyed this very much, and I've learned a lot from all of you, my good friends and my good colleagues. I'd like to conclude by each of you telling us how people that are watching this show can become involved in your organizations. Let me start with Danny, please.
Sure. Thanks, Ernie. So the Alliance for Retired Americans, again, is a national nonprofit organization working on senior issues across the nation. You can get involved by going to www.retiredamericans.org and click on the button Learn More.
Good. Outstanding. Alex?
Well, my day job is Executive Director of Social Security Works, where we work with all of us together on a lot of things through the coalition, the Strengthen Social Security Coalition. And you can find that at strengthensocialsecurity.org. And there's a big button that says, take action, that you can become part of our network and what we're working on. I also invite people to check out weactradio.com because, like I said, I think democratizing the means of production and media is a really important part of organizing. So at weactradio.com, you can sign up, you can check out a lot of our shows. Maria's new show is fantastic. All of our shows are fantastic. And in all of these cases, I also think, obviously you can come to us, you can get involved with us, but also take the things that you learn from us and put them out through your channels, because that's the best way. That's what I love seeing the most, right? Is seeing our stuff on Facebook when it comes back to us, and you're like, that's when you know that things are working. Is when you see things that we're talking about and our message being spread around organically by people.
Outstanding. Natasha?
It's been mentioned several times, but the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, you can go to www.ncpssm.org.
And you're based in Boston, and you manage a number of states for the National
Northeast,
Committee?
yeah.
Okay.
So if you're from the Northeast, please get involved and come be a volunteer. We're doing great work up there.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
And you can listen to me every Wednesday at 11 a.m. here at State of Play with me, Maria Roach, at weactradio.com. And as far as the activism work, my movement is unitedforchangeusa.org. And we are really focused on social change, social justice issues.
Well, it's been a great show, and I've learned a lot from all of you. Again, another note on the National Committee. This is the Grassroots Corner, sponsored by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. If you'd like to get involved with us, please call our member services line at 1-800-966-1935. We've got groups all around the country, grassroots groups, that are training and learning and mobilizing and fighting on behalf of preserving and protecting Social Security and Medicare. I want to thank my colleagues for a great show and a great afternoon. I learned a lot. I'll see you next time on the Grassroots Corner. Thank you.
This is John Bauman. You know me best as Bowser, formerly of the group Shot On Up. And you know, when we were rocking and rolling all those years ago, I wasn't particularly worrying about my retirement or how I'd pay for health care. But now that I'm 65, I really understand the importance of Medicare. Not just for myself, but for generations of working Americans who need secure health care as they get older. That's why this election is so important. The Romney-Ryan Coupon Care Plan will mean the end of traditional Medicare. It gives seniors a partial payment which loses value over time and raises our health care costs as much as $500 more each month. Coupon Care also puts us at the mercy of private insurers, making it harder to pick our own doctors. All of this to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy? Are you kidding me? Americans of all ages, say no to Coupon Care. Bum 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 dang 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 ding a dong ding. Preserve Medicare.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Visit us online at weactradio.com.
June 27th is National HIV Testing Day.
HIV testing is fast, painless, and often free.
I've been tested for HIV.
I've been tested for HIV. Have you? To find an HIV testing center near you, visit greaterthan.org.
You're listening to